In this video we're going to be taking a look at the Wolfang GA440 action camera. This is a GoPro style action camera that can shoot up to 5K footage, but it will cost you less than half the price of a new GoPro. Let's take a look. So if you want to buy an action camera from one of the big brands such as GoPro, Insta360 or DJI, then you'll be paying about £300 to £400 for one of these little cameras. And if you think about it, that's actually quite a lot for a small action camera that produces images similar to a smartphone. So the company Wolfang reached out and asked if I wanted to test out one of their cameras. So this particular camera that they sent out to me is called the GA440. So I'm going to be honest, I had never heard of the brand Wolfang before, so I was curious to see whether or not their action camera could actually hold up to something like a GoPro or an Osmo Action. So here we have the Wolfang GA440, which I believe is one of their higher end action cameras. So some of the headline features of this specific camera is that it can shoot up to 5K footage. It can shoot 20 megapixel stills. It can also shoot slow motion video at 720p, 240 frames per second, or 1080p at 120 frames per second. It even has an LCD screen on the front so you can view yourself if you're vlogging. So all the features that I've mentioned on this Wolfang are impressive, but unfortunately they have all been present on the GoPro for the last 4 years. So why would someone pick up this action camera from a brand they've probably never heard of? Well, the honest answer is the price. Well, this exact camera is going on Amazon for about £150, which is half the price of a new GoPro. I'm going to start this video off by having a look at what you get in the box. So here it is, here's the Wolfang GA440, the camera itself. And overall I am quite impressed with how it feels in the hand. It feels well put together, it's got a nice weight to it. And here's just a quick size comparison. So this is the GoPro Hero 9. And as you can see, the Wolfang camera is slightly smaller than the GoPro and it is slightly lighter. So we're going to have a closer look at the camera itself. As you can see, this is the camera without the case on. So the design itself is pretty similar to most other action cameras. It has a small LCD screen at the front and then a slightly larger 2.2-inch touch screen on the back. At the top of the camera we have a record button and a microphone hole. On the side of the camera we have a power button and a mode selector button. On the bottom of the camera we have some information about the battery and a tripod thread. Then moving the camera around to the other side, this is a speaker I believe, and then this is where the charger or data transfer USB cable attaches. So even though this camera comes with some plastic housing, this led me to believe that this camera wasn't waterproof without the housing, but in fact it turns out that this camera is waterproof up to 12 meters without the housing on. So this is why this camera is so interesting. So if you have a closer look around the camera itself, there's actually nowhere to remove the battery or add an SD card. So the battery and storage for this camera are actually built into the camera itself. There's no way to remove them, which may be a deal breaker for some people, but I think it's what they had to do to get this camera waterproof without housing. So that means for this particular camera, you're not able to carry spare batteries around and swap them in. You have to rely on the inbuilt battery. And in terms of storage, this comes with 64 gigabytes of inbuilt storage, which will probably be enough for most people, but it's worth keeping in mind that you aren't able to swap in a larger SD card. And I say that that's an interesting design choice because if we come over here, this is the GoPro 9. So this camera is actually waterproof without a case. So the interesting thing about this camera is you can actually remove the battery and put an SD card in it. as well as connect to USB-C. So it's quite interesting that Wolfang didn't opt for a waterproof door to allow you to remove the battery and add an SD card. This may have been a feature that they implemented to keep the price of the camera down. So in the box it comes with this interesting magnetic connector, and you connect it like so using magnets. And then this allows you to either connect this camera to your computer or charge the camera. I think this style of charger is quite a brave move from Wolfang because it's not very universal. So if you do lose this particular wire that comes in the box, to be honest, I'm not sure how easy it's going to be to find a replacement. So that's something to keep in mind. And the menu system on this camera is quite intuitive. So as you can see, we're on the video setting. So on the home screen, you can click this button in the corner and it will bring up your previous video files or pictures. If you press where it says slow motion 1080p 120, it will bring up this menu that allows you to select a shooting mode. But if you want to adjust some of the video settings, including the video quality, you click this cog icon and it will bring up a menu. So there's actually a number of different resolutions. You go 4K 60, 4K 30, 2.7K, 1080p, 720p, with a bunch of different frame rates, which is nice. So this camera also gives you some other options such as electrical image stabilization, so you can turn this on and it will stabilize your video. But for the majority of my testing, I turn this off because it does actually add quite a large crop to your video. There's also an option to correct image distortion, and you can click this angle button to adjust the field of view. So if you click this mode selection button, it'll bring you to the photo mode. And to take a photo or to start recording a video, you just press the button on the top. One thing that is worth mentioning is how to use the front facing screen, because it's not immediately obvious how you use the front screen. So what you have to do is hold the mode select button for a couple of seconds. Then as you can see, the image appears on the front screen. So this camera comes with this plastic housing which allows the camera to go down to depths of 40 meters as opposed to the 12 meters without the case. And if you've owned a GoPro Hero 3 or Hero 4, then this case is very similar to the cases that came with those older GoPros. And as you can see on the bottom, it uses the mounting system very similar to what GoPro uses. And I've tried this camera with my GoPro accessories and they all fit. So if you've got a bunch of GoPro accessories lying around, then you should be able to use them with this camera. But this Wolfang camera does come with a couple of attachments in the box. So this all comes in the box. So this camera does come with Wi-Fi, so you can download an app for your phone and remotely control this camera using the app. But if you don't fancy using the app, it does come with a small remote control, so you can record and take photos using this little button here. So on paper, this should be able to produce some pretty decent looking video. So I'll put some test footage on screen so you can see for yourself. So overall, I think the video quality from this camera is okay. The quality is definitely not as good as a new GoPro, but that wasn't to be expected. This device is a lot cheaper. So I'm going to start with the positives. I think this camera can produce some very nice looking colors. I was pretty impressed with the colors produced from this camera. So in terms of the video quality, the first thing I want to highlight is the field of view. So on the box, this camera is advertised to shoot 150 degrees, which is a fairly decent field of view. I think it's slightly less than the GoPro. I think GoPros can shoot about 170 degrees. But the main issue I've noticed with the field of view is as soon as you start reducing the resolution or adding stabilization, the field of view dramatically decreases. So it seems like the only way to get the full 150 degree field of view is to shoot at 5K 30 frames per second without any image stabilization, because image stabilization crops in on the footage. So the question is, how good is the 5K footage from this camera? Because 5K should capture a lot of detail because it is a very high resolution file. Now, even though I do think the video quality is fairly decent, I don't think that the 5K is true 5K. It just doesn't look as sharp as I would expect 5K to look. The best comparison I can make is the quality of this looks similar to a GoPro from about 8 or 9 years ago. And one other thing to note, even though this has electronic image stabilization, it does cause quite a large crop to your image, and the image stabilization on this definitely isn't as good as hyper smooth on the GoPro. Next, I tried shooting some slow motion footage with this camera, and it's quite nice that it has a slow motion feature, but unfortunately there is a massive crop and the footage itself does look quite low quality. So next we're going to have a look at the stills taken with this camera. So this can take 20 megapixel stills. So we're going to pop some example photos on screen, and my first impressions are that the images do have decent colors, but they definitely don't look like 20 megapixel photos. The best way to describe these photos is they look like probably 8 megapixel photos from an iPhone from about 10 years ago. So in conclusion, should you pick up a Wolfang GA440? And the answer is maybe. So for £150 you are actually getting quite a lot for your money. So you're getting a 5K action camera that has both front and back screens. In the box it comes with a decent range of mounting options as well as a remote control and app support. So if you're after an action camera but you don't want to spend the money on a big brand such as GoPro or Osmo Action, then the Wolfang lineup of cameras might be a good place to look. And for £150 this is a competitive camera, but the downsides of picking up one of these cameras over something like a GoPro is that the image quality will not be quite as good. You're also not able to change the battery on this camera, but I have noticed that the battery does last a good couple of hours. This camera also has inbuilt storage, so if that's a deal breaker then I would probably look at one of the other models of Wolfang cameras or a different camera altogether. So that's been my review of the Wolfang GA440. So if you're interested in checking out Wolfang's website or this product specifically, I've put links below. And I just want to say that Wolfang sent me a review unit, but they didn't pay me to say anything specific. So everything I've said is my own opinion. And hopefully this video has been useful if you were thinking about buying this camera. And as always, if you have enjoyed, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We've just hit 3,000 subscribers, which is absolutely amazing. And I will see everyone in my next video.